you're a business owner, right? You're trying to build a business, and you go to any high-level companies, and you'll see them doing these exact same things because they have to account for every minute, every hour has a value to it, right? We don't get those minutes, we don't get those hours back. So if you're not willing to spend that time doing a time audit, like if you're the solopreneur right now, you have to do that time audit for yourself. You have to figure, like, what am I doing throughout my day? Because if you don't know, you can't hire someone to help you do the things maybe, as we'll get to, that you're not really good at. I'm Evan Pritchett, joined by my wonderful, amazing, I don't have enough accolades to really go through it right now, but COO for the Pritchett Companies and all that is the Pritchett Company. It's not just the Pritchett Company. There's so many other things that she manages, operates, and makes sure just from that integrator role in our companies to make happen. And that's Miss Walker Strickland joining me here. All right. Hello.
Hello.
We've been working all day, so forgive our words, because we've both been like mixing things up as we go through the day, because we've gotten a lot of words in today. A lot of things have been done as we've been working today. You may at some point in time during this webinar meet one of her 3 Dachshunds. I don't know. They may stay outside. Who knows? They may decide that they need to come inside. But we wanted to make sure that we got this second edition of our Bulletproof business plan out to you all in as quickly as possible. Because I personally know, like, as someone who started a company 13 to almost 14 years ago now, and for the first 4 or 5 years, it was kind of like me and a handful of people, and like, it's just kind of this back and forth and just struggling to, are we going to make it to the next point? But it wasn't until I was able to find someone who could really help me solidify our operations and get us on a path. Start working on process, start working on finance, start working on marketing, start working on how can we add additional staff to do all the things that we need to do. And that's what operations is. And that's what we want to talk with you all about. Again, we won't take too long, maybe about an hour. I know if it was up to Walker, we'd probably spend just 30 minutes doing this evening.
We're a little tired.
But I know that this is something that's vitally necessary for whether you're an insurance agent, starting your own practice. And actually, I mean, this applies to really any business.
Any industry.
Any industry that you're in. So you can share this with other individuals who maybe it's not just that they're in the insurance business with you, but they're wanting to get some of these tools. They're wanting to learn a little bit more about, okay, how can I structure my business? How can I set it up? And so over the rest of this year, basically, we're going to do 1 a quarter. We started off, me and my good friend, Mr. Cody Askins, helped me kick off the introduction to Bulletproof Your Business last month. This is the first in our part of the series where we're going to take you through some key components, 4 key components to being able to build and structure your business in a way so that it's not just a self-employed job that you have, but it's actually a business that can run with you. Like, I love the fact that I get to be involved in my business, and I feel like I do some work.
Very involved.
But if I ever had to step away, and when I do step away, because I do get the opportunity to step away from my business, I don't have to worry. We have the people, the processes, the systems in place. Even you, Walker. I mean, like, you've taken some extended vacations from time to time.
A few weeks last year.
and because of how things have been structured, the business keeps running. It's not dependent, like, we're not building something that's dependent on any one person. The whole goal of this is for you to start thinking about what is it that you need. Because I would imagine most people who are watching this right now, you might be a business of one. And that's fantastic. That's where I started. When I started with my IMO back in 2010, it was business of one. And it wasn't until 7 or 8 months later that I hired my first employee. And then from there, it was employee number 2, then employee number 3, then employee number 4, then employee number 5.
And we cleaned house.
Then we had to let go of
Happens
4,
sometimes.
3, and 2. One had already departed. And then we had to say, okay, how do we not repeat that?
Yeah.
So like, these aren't lessons from I've done it perfect along the way. I have had amazing, very capable individuals that have joined the organization that have helped us to start to build and grow the organization, where now we have a team of, just in the Asheville office, what is it, 11 out of Asheville?
Yeah.
And, in Puerto Rico, we have another 7 individuals working. Now in Houston, we're getting ready to swell our ranks pretty largely, with another 15 to 16 employees that are getting ready to be a part of the overall organization. But all of this would not happen, and we wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for a game plan, if we weren't thinking about this very strategically. Even as we're doing this new operation here in Houston, we're going about it in a very strategic way. We're analyzing what the situation is, what does it need, and what do we need to put in place. So throughout the conversation today, as we talk about operations, we really want to just lay out what are some of the areas that you want to think about. And just from Walker's experience and like what she has done, what she's lived through, how she has, and I don't say this to belittle in any way, but how she's grown up in business, right?
It's true.
Like, 'cause where we start is not where we are. So like, as you learn a little bit more each and every single year, you're able to really expand on your capabilities as a business owner. So again, now that we're getting everyone who's going to join, and seems it's not too many people. Walker doesn't like to speak in front of a whole bunch of people.
I do not.
She's definitely more of a one-woman person, which is one key thing to look for if you're looking for someone to help you with your operations, with the integrations. Like, here's the thing that we learned. When did we start working with Traction and the Entrepreneur Operating System? Was that 4 years ago?
No, at least
5?
6.
Okay, so 6 years ago. So we started working, and this is a great book. If you haven't picked this one up, take a look at the book Traction. All right. It gives you an outline and a guide where you can start really looking at your business and what is it that your business needs right now and what is it going to need. Here's the thing that you're going to see when you first start looking at Traction is, in Traction, you're going to see a list of a whole bunch of different operational components that your business needs. Initially, you're all those pieces. Okay. That's your job. The first person to really be looking for, in my opinion, is who's going to be the integrator for you. Because you, as the business owner, the creator of the business, the one who started this, you're always going to be in that CEO visionary role. You're the one who's looking, you're forward thinking, you have 20 ideas a day, and you need to have 19 of those shot down by the end of the day so that you can keep your focus on the one. Walker's trying to shoot down. She gets about 15 of mine out most days.
Well, and I think throughout this, like, there will be multiple examples of how Edward and I have realized, like, what a strength of mine is not necessarily a strength of his, but what a strength of his is not necessarily a strength of mine. And so the relationship, therefore, is very complementary.
Yeah.
And, I don't think we necessarily knew that going in, but it grew over time and it has become incredibly fruitful because of that, because it's a lot of being able to pick up what the other, doesn't shoulder as well. And I think that is such, for your first hire, I think that is like such a big thing to look at when you're thinking about yourself and your business. Where am I weak?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things I don't like doing, right? What are the things that I struggle to put time into? And so if you can identify those and pull them apart, and find someone who does enjoy them, then, and we've done this, and I've done this with staff that we've hired. I know that there are things I do not enjoy doing, and we have staff that do. And so that's, something that we'll continuously probably talk through in this webinar.
And that, we were talking about this earlier, that self-awareness. You as a business owner have to practice and work on more self-awareness for yourself to know what are those places, so that when you're looking for someone to come join your team, I got lucky. That's what I would say. I got lucky in finding someone like Walker. And here's the thing, like, you worked with us for a period of time.
You did.
And then because of situations at the company at the time, you're like, no, this isn't the place for me. And that was a moment for me to be a little bit more self-aware and say, okay, who do I want working with me as we build a company? And I had to, as you said, we had to clean house. And then at that point, you're like, oh, okay, I might be willing to actually look to come back.
Yeah.
And the reason that I was willing to do that, and I didn't do that just for that, like there was a whole bunch of reasons involved in that, but it allowed me to bring someone onto the team, my team, that complimented me in ways that I didn't have those things, or those weren't areas that I was the best at. And those are some of the things that we'll talk about as we go through this. So here are the key areas that we're going to hit on today. And these are the things that I want you to write down. These are areas that you want to make sure that if you're wanting your business to grow, right? Like if you want it to become more than just a small business of you just doing all the stuff all the time, and you want to actually build out an enterprise level business at some point in time, you have to have someone who's helping you out with process. Number one, like what are the processes? I'm an engineer by training. I like to write down and take a look at and see like what are the processes that we need. But the implementation, right? And making sure that everyone is doing those processes, that's something that I wasn't very good at, something that Walker is very good at. All right. Then you have finance. Finance is something that, like, if you're running a business, somebody has to be looking at finance. Somebody has to be talking with the finance director. Somebody has, or making sure that finances are being taken care of, make sure that accountants are looking at what they need to do to make sure that everything is looking good on the P&L and the balance sheet, and bring that to your attention as the CEO. If someone's not bringing it to your attention and things are just happening, then money's just going out and you have no idea that you're actually not winning. Then we have human resources. This is how you start to scale. You can't scale by yourself. There's no such thing as scaling alone. So someone who can come in and not only help you with the human resources side, but then as the management happens, as you're actually working with those employees, who's talking with them, who's working with them on a regular basis. Marketing, of course, that's key. We're going to get into that in deeper detail in one of our future. We're going to talk about finance as well, but we're talking about marketing as well in one of our future webinars, because how does your business grow? I mean, just like this webinar and you all being a part of it here this evening, if it wasn't for marketing, you wouldn't know about it, right? We wouldn't have clients if we didn't have a way or a process for marketing to them. And as we continue to expand, that is a tremendous part of being able to grow and scale a business. And lastly is vision. And I put that at the end. Normally people say, well, start with the vision. You have a vision, right? So that already exists. The other four things have to be there as well. And then once those things are in place, now you have to readdress the vision. Like, does the vision still match up with what we can do via process, via finances, via the human capital that we have, via the marketing that we're doing? All of these things and more, like these are 5 things. Operations is a much bigger topic, but these 5 things, I think, for me, are key. And especially in these 4 areas, these are areas that you have helped me to really hone in on my deficiencies, like sure. the areas that I'm not good. Like I recently found out about a little slush fund that exists for our company, because I'm one who I like to invest. I'm a business owner. I'm an investor. I'm like, oh yeah, let's try this, let's try that. And, but not thinking about like, what does that mean to make sure, can we make payroll? Can we pay taxes? Can we do the things that are necessary? But having an operations manager that says, you know what? Hey, finance director Tom, can we let's set some stuff aside.
A little bit every month.
Just in case, right? And those are the kind of people that you need to help you, right? And again, if you can't do that right now, you probably already have people in your life. Like I know when you first came on board, my wife Rebecca she did payroll. She managed the finances and the budget, and she kept me accountable there. but then there was a point where she was able to hand that off.
Right.
And she wouldn't have been able to hand that off to someone if you hadn't been in that place where when we brought on a finance person, we
Right.
had someone that could manage that. So these are the 5 areas. We're going to hit on each of them for 5 or 6 minutes, just to kind of give you some ideas, right? Like this is not the end all be all. Again, this is a 1-hour webinar, guys. Like you got to sit down and actually do a little bit more digging. But here's what I would ask in the chat. I want you to post just write the word. Which one of these areas do you feel like, and I'm asking you to be self-aware here, you struggle with, right? Just recognizing that, I struggle with finance, or I struggle with human resource. I struggle with just recognize it. Just go ahead and let everybody know, so that as you go through this webinar here this evening, that when we get to that point, take as many notes on that particular area as possible, so that you can see, okay, if that's the area that I struggle with the most, what can I outsource, right? Who can I find to help me with that particular area? All right.
And I think that's really important as we're going through each of these, is that your first hire might be more finance heavy, right? Your first hire might be more process heavy. And we'll talk about each of these, but that is going to help you recognize what you specifically need out of let's assume you don't even have a first hire, right? What do you want out of that first person who comes into your business? And so understanding, oh, this is where I'm deficient. You're immediately going to know, well, I need to know that they have A, B, and C down pat, and I don't have to worry about that when they come on board.
Yeah. So. And that'll be one thing, we'll talk about this in the HR section, but how do you find that out about somebody?
Right.
Because that's a skill and a talent in and of itself. But we'll start off with process. So the things that we'll talk about in here. One, just defining it. What's the workflow? And then once I have the workflow, how can I manage for efficiency? Sorry, again, words I've been using a lot today. Streamlining those operations. Once I've defined it, the way that I get efficiency is by looking for where are we getting caught up? What's slowing down? Where are we wasting time? We'll maybe hit on time audits a little bit on that, because I think that's good for both people that you hire, but starting off with for yourself.
For sure.
And then what feedback loops are you putting into place in order to make sure that happens? So let me stop the share and go back to that. All right. So process. I mean, I think for me, the way that I would kind of put it to you and how you can share with our audience here today is what does that mean from an operation standpoint? Because we talk about this idea of process,
right?
And most people they don't understand the basic definition. What is it for a business to have a process for how they do business?
Sure. Yeah. And so I think it's really about, if you think about anything, so as an agent, when you are calling leads, what is your process for that? How are you tracking it, right? I mean, we're very lucky that Quality and Symmetry provides us with so many different resources to help us with that. But what is your own accountability system that you're using? So things like that, I think, are really important. Give me another good one.
Well, I'm
starting out, especially.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can have a system, but what's the whether it's a tracker, activity. I mean, this is where it goes to the time audit.
Sure.
I think the time audit is a good place to start, because when people get started, a lot of times they're just well, I'm working,
right,
but nothing's happening. So exactly. So address that. So how can they really look at what am I really doing?
Right. Yeah. And so we actually developed, we have a head of process management now, which is a hire that we it was an admin we ended up being able to promote, because we saw the sweet spot of what she is good at. And we were able to put her in that space, and she was able to develop her skill set from there. So, but in that role, what we have our staff do sometimes is time audits. And so basically we'll go, they'll say, I'm feeling really stuck, or I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be prioritizing right now. And we'll go, well, what are you doing all day? And the thing is I can't, I'm sorry. And the thing is I can't sit, I can't sit over their shoulder and watch them. Right. And I can't help them identify those things. And so they have to do it themselves. And what we do is we've just developed a system where they can basically as they go about their day. In our CRM that we use, they are able to start and stop their time. So that phone call lasts 3 minutes or 30 minutes. And what was it about? And what did you accomplish? Right. So they're able to track those notes, and we've been able to see, okay, well, you're spending way too much time on blank, and we didn't even know that that was a thing you thought you were supposed to prioritize. That happens sometimes. And then you're able to redirect and refocus. And so doing it for our own selves in our day-to-day is really helpful as well. I mean, Edward will be the first to tell you, I think that for a very long time, he was not good at delegating. And so I would often find him doing things that he should not be spending his time on, right? I mean, he's got so many more high-level things that we want him thinking about and prioritizing. And so that's a great way to keep yourself accountable and keep your staff accountable.
Yeah. And I would say too, like, as you think about that, like some people will look at a time audit and be like, well, I don't want to sit down and do that. Like, that's like tracking every minute that I do. Okay. You're a business owner, right? You're trying to build a business. And you go to any high-level companies and you'll see them doing these exact same things because they have to account for every minute, every hour has a value to it, right? We don't get those minutes, we don't get those hours back. So if you're not willing to spend that time doing a time audit, like if you're the solopreneur right now, you have to do that time audit for yourself. You have to figure, like, what am I doing throughout my day? Because if you don't know, you can't hire someone to help you do the things maybe, as we'll get to, that you're not really good at.
Right.
So if you get into the habit of doing a time audit, it's not every day. It's,
once a quarter.
Once a quarter, I'm going to spend the next 2 days really tracking what am I doing with the minutes and hours of my business day, so that I can figure out, like, here are the things that are bringing ROI, like, right, we're getting a return on the time invested, or here are the things I'm like, that doesn't
3 hours on that, and I have nothing to show for
nothing
it.
to show for it right there. And so that's where, because here's the thing, we say process as though we're saying, like, we're trying to teach you how to create a process. You already have a process. We would have to do a deep dive with you individually to kind of walk through your process and see if we're going to change any of that. The thing that we can advise you, if you're wanting to change your process, if you're wanting to get more effective, more efficient, if you're wanting to be able to streamline it, one, know what you're actually doing. What kind of time are you spending to make what happens on a regular basis happen? And that's where I think the time audit is, like, simple tool, and one that I loathed in the beginning. But even for myself, and I recommend this to my agency owners to do from time to time. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not getting the results that I want. Okay, let's send me your time audit. What does 8 hours of your work day actually look like? And what you'll typically find out is, one, people who don't want to do it, it's usually because, like, they know they're not really doing a lot during their day.
There's not a lot of efficiency happening.
There's not a lot going on, and you'll find, especially once you start hiring employees, like, when you have an employee that is kind of looking at their time audit, they're going to start doing it. And they'll be like, I better start working, or I might not have a job anymore. Because they start seeing, here's what I'm spending all this time on.
It's definitely not a micromanaging tool, to be clear, but it's very helpful for the individual doing it, and for the people who have to help them manage their time. So it's a big recommendation. And then again, it's one of those things that helps you pinpoint what your weakness might be. If you are, even as we're talking about what your first hire might be, some people need an admin, some people need a recruiter, some people, it just depends. How many hours are you spending recruiting compared to, or time on your recruiting methods compared to your, fellow agents, right? What if that time is double? Then maybe you have a weakness spot that we've identified, right? And so having those conversations with, people that you work with as well is really, really important.
Definitely. So the next area that we wanted to hit on is the area of finance. So let me pull that up here real quick. Pops up over there. All right. So finance. What is the planning looking like? Like, are you actually sitting down, and this was a difficult thing this is where originally, as I said earlier, my wife stepped into this role to say, we need a P&L, we need a balance sheet. Like, why did you spend $4,000 on leads last month?
Right.
And then what was the return on that?
Yeah.
So budgeting, forecasting, cash flow management, like those things have to start happening as soon as possible. You're starting a business. Cash flow is the fuel for your business. If you run into, there was one time, this was like back in 2011, where, I had one staff person at that point in time. And because cash flow was off, I missed one payroll. Walker, have I ever missed a payroll since you've been?
No.
We have a lot of staff now, like over 25 staff members throughout. Like, have we ever missed payroll? Like,
No.
We don't miss payroll, right? And that's a cash flow management situation. And if I don't know what's happening, if I don't know where things are going, you're gonna run into an issue, right? It's just gonna happen. Cost controls. How do you reduce expenses and make sure? This is where we're going back to the time on it. Like, if I'm trying to maximize profitability, I want to make sure that time is being spent in the right place. And then lastly, this is where on the finance side, when you're looking for someone to help you out with this, so it starts with just basic financial planning, then you get into cost control. All right. And then when you start to get even more advanced in your business, again, these are layers. You don't have to start off with this. You don't necessarily need a financial analyst when you're first starting your business or getting going. But as you want to expand and really scale up, you need to understand, like, what's happening. What's happening from a finance standpoint? Where should we be spending more time? Like, one of the things I've recently tasked our finance officer with is, hey, which organizations are bringing in the most revenue, and where do I need to be spending my time to help to increase and maximize that? All right. So, as you've seen this from an operational standpoint, what would be that advice? And let's do this kind of a starting and like mid-level, like when they're just getting started.
For sure.
What are some things that they can do to just start off on, how can I set myself up to have the best financial operations model, so that when I do bring in somebody to help me, or here's the thing, when you go to your CPA or your accountant for tax time, you're not presenting like, well, here's my box of receipts, like, boom. What are some of the things that they can do to kind of get started on that?
Yeah. So I would say, interestingly, like one of the things I've seen the most in the last, however long it's been, 7.5 years or so, especially with new agents, is not having control of the fact that their cash flow is going to, it could go up and down for that first year or that second year. I mean, sometimes you're just not on your game. Sometimes you have a family emergency. Sometimes things happen. And so recognizing like what you need to put away in order to pay your taxes is really important. Some people come to us, and this is such a big piece of advice, I think, for as you're recruiting too, is to talk to them about how to manage their money when it gets to tax time, because that's not being pulled out, And here's the thing, there are people like me who love that we have someone on our staff who does that, and I don't have to do it at the end of the year. I just go to H&R Block and I type in my little information, and that's it. But there are people, of course, like you all, who are entrepreneurs who want to manage this yourselves. And so part of the managing it yourselves is having a system in place. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that QuickBooks is exactly where you start, but even having a spreadsheet that you're going off of to start, and you're writing these things down so that you're crystal clear about where your money is coming in and where it's going out. And I just think that sometimes, like, people think that that is going to be difficult, but there are so many online courses. We're happy to look up some and send them to you for better basic finance, as far as, especially for 1099 employees go. And I just think starting that, so that when you do have to go to your accountant come April or whenever you go, it just makes your life so much easier. You spend less money with them, and it's just really important. And I think you build that all the way up over time. And I think as you hire people or hire someone to manage those finances, they're going to get QuickBooks for you. All of a sudden, your life has become that much easier, and your business is being maintained that much better. You're just sending the info to get into your QuickBooks to your accountant, right? And so these things get easier over time, but setting yourself up with a basic process is so, so important, especially with your finances. I mean, there's nothing more devastating, I don't think, than like having a financial blow that you didn't expect purely because you didn't take the hour a week to make sure that you were properly, marking your expenses and your costs. So, yeah.
And you said it, an hour a week. Like we're not talking about, I got to sit in front of a spreadsheet for, a day and a half. It's, can I spend an hour a week and have that dedicated time to say, okay, this is what I need to put into the spreadsheet. It could be as simple as there's an income column and an expense column. Like that's where it can start, and then from there, the carriers, they send us our 1099s, that plus this spreadsheet to my accountant, and they have a much easier task than just, hey, here's some 1099s, go take care of it. And here's my bank statement.
Yeah.
Right. But like when I can say income, the expense, and maybe you can get crazy. You can like put like, what was the expense for? Maybe where does what carrier did this income come in from?
Yeah. Make a Google Drive folder, just put all those in one place. And yeah, I think it's incredibly important to start.
And then when they're looking for those people to help them with finance work, and this, as we get ready to transition into talking about HR,
right?
What are some of those things? Like initially, it may just be, we had an accountant for a while.
We did.
Before we had anybody in the finance role.
True.
What are some of the things that you would give advice on as far as how to either interview that person or look for someone who's actually going to help you manage and handle your finances correctly?
Yeah. I mean, the finance bunch are kind of an interesting breed. Like people who are good at finance and enjoy finance, often their brains work a little bit differently than most of the other people you'll be hiring. And something that Edward and I have talked about and that we've run into quite a bit is that at times there seems to be kind of like an emotional disconnect that we don't expect out of a new employee. And by that, I mean that they're not always great maybe at asking for help, or they're not always great at saying, I'm a bit overwhelmed with what you have going on. How can we work together to make this better? And I think because of that, we've had a couple relationships suffer. And so, now as we look for a finance person, I actually am making sure that the personality matches what the energy of our team has, even if they're like, clearly their resume is outstanding, spectacular, and they've got great references. I still want to know that when I talk to them that there's someone because the last thing you want is someone who is overwhelmed with your finances and doesn't know how to ask for help, because that's not getting you anywhere good, right? And it's just going to mean more work for your accountant probably on the back end. And so definitely looking for someone to be able to balance both that analytical brain that you hope they should have with some sense of self and how they relate to other people. Because I think one of the biggest things we look for in any hire, or especially in the last few years, is just a vulnerability. And that actually, I think, comes across in all stations, but the finance people are the hardest to peg on it. So
because you definitely need that analytical side.
Yes.
But a lot can be hidden by that.
Yes.
You might not get that emotional compatibility.
Right.
And like, again, what's the culture? How are we looking to have our organization run?
Yeah.
That self-awareness.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things that get a little bit difficult as we get into the, picking someone for that particular role that can actually do that role well.
Sure.
But being able to, again, like if you're feeling overwhelmed with it, just be honest. Again, that self-awareness, like let your accountant know.
Right.
If you are like, hey, I have all this stuff going on and I can't get a handle, ask them for advice. Right.
100%.
That's where that delegation, that being able to get counsel from others so that you can grow those areas that you may be deficient in or that you are deficient in. Let's just call it what it is. Like if that's not your area, then let me ask the questions of the people who it is their area to learn how I can do it better. And so speaking of that, let's go and talk about on the finance, the HR side.
Yes, let's.
All right. Get this screen to move here. All right. So human resources.
This
All
is
right.
probably my favorite topic.
And this is an area that you excel in. And one of the things that I rely on you immensely for, like, you do all initial interviews. I mean, the only people that I talk to as far as hiring for the company are people that you are like, okay, this is my 1, 2, 3. You let me know. I mean, we're going through that process right now, and you've already like, this is my number one. You let me know, and it doesn't sway me. It's just like whenever I have that conversation with that person, if I'm like, well, I like that person. It's already Walker's number one from everybody she's talked to. It really shortens the time that I have to spend and devote to doing that. So
For
that,
sure.
as you're saying, like if you're the CEO or visionary, you can get back to doing those things and
For
continue to drive the company forward. But building a strong team, like how that looks,
It starts with your first hire.
it does. There you go.
And that's because and also you have to remember too, I mean, the self work you're doing, the intention and time you're putting into yourself. I always say that our company culture has, of course, trickled from Edward to me, and down to all of our staff. And, you know, and because we have shared values, you know, shared work ethic, shared wants, sorry, Gertie, you know, and a shared vision for how we want people to feel at work every day, how we want people to juggle their work and their lives, right? All of that is consistent between us. And because of that, it spreads across everyone else. And we have certainly had a hire that we were, you know, thought that person shared in a similar vision, and it didn't. And one kind of, I won't say bad egg, but one person who doesn't fit into that culture can really blow things up and make it really hard for everyone else. And so it's really important, I think, is just to note that you have someone who is as intentional and thoughtful about the self-work as Edward is, because it blossoms and it blooms out to the people around him.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, like that idea of self-work,
Mhm.
right? One thing that we talk about within our IMO is the continuous pursuit of personal growth, right?
Mhm.
Personal development, whether that's just books that you're reading, you know, stuff that you're plugging into. I know we've engaged a few years back with an organization in Asheville that has been very beneficial, I think, or I know, to our
For sure.
company, in the sense where it got us to start thinking about things beyond just like what I'm doing in my day-to-day work.
Sure.
Like, who am I dealing with? You know, for lack of a better word, dealing with personal traumas that affect us in how we interact with our fellow
everybody
employee.
But guess who you spend the most time with?
I mean, we spend so much time at work,
right?
You know, for better or worse when it comes to that. But like,
Sure.
we spend so much time with the people that we work with, and by taking a couple of days a year out and saying, let's get everybody together, let's have these conversations, let's have these discussions, let's learn more about each other, and then that helps us as a company to really establish what is the culture that we have. And it starts with you as the chief executive officer. Mm-hmm. And then that with that first hire and talking with, you know, as I said earlier, Walker left the company because she said, like, what you were saying doesn't match up with what I'm seeing here. And I was like, fair enough. Like, I can't argue with you on that. And let me see if I can do something about that. Things were done. And then I can remember some of those conversations whenever you were like, should I come back? You know, like when I don't know. Well, sure. Like I reached out, I was like, hey, just to let you know, like, right. You know, this is what has happened. Would love to be able to have you back. And I can tell you about, here's the way it's going to be from here going forward.
Correct.
And so there was a contract, right? There was a social contract made saying, like, this is the culture that I told you it was, and what you said you want to be a part of. You saw that it wasn't that, so you couldn't be a part of it. So here's what we're going to do now. Can we, you know, re-up that contract? Yeah. And like, that's something we continually have. Like, it's ever evolving and ever developing. For sure. But we continue to have conversations just as much about like what things that we're going to do to who are we going to be. Yeah. You know, what how do we want to present to our employees? What kind of benefits do we want to have? What do we want to foster that is said and done on a Zoom meeting for our staff versus like we've been on some other Zoom meetings here recently and we're like, we wouldn't run a meeting like
We would
that.
not,
Like
yeah.
we're not going to allow that to be either said, done, shown, whatever it is. So it's just like, what is the culture? Like you have to establish that first for yourself and hold to it.
Right.
Like that's something that I didn't do originally. I didn't hold to the culture that I said I wanted to have because I didn't make tough decisions. And those tough decisions are sometimes there are people that are not compatible with your organization. Yeah. And you have to decide, like, if you're going to hold on to, you call it one bad egg, one bad apple, whatever it is. And bad, good, just not compatible, right? Yeah. Like if you have a vision, don't continue to associate with people and have people as a part of your organization that don't meet that vision. That it's just that doesn't work. The longer you let that linger, and that's what I found out the hard way, the longer you let that linger, the harder it is to actually do something when that time comes to actually do it.
And the more money he paid in severance. So
and the last thing that I want you to hit on, like, here's the thing that people hate to talk about, but when you have staff, you're going to have conflict.
Yes.
When you have more than two people in a room, there's going to be conflict at some point in time.
And in 7.5 years, Edward's only hung up on me once. I
think it was an accident. I don't know that I actually hung up out of line. Okay. There was the one time, and I called and apologized shortly after, because I knew that was not the right thing to do. That was not our culture, right? So.
But then again, I was the one raising my voice. And I think the thing is like, it is a constant learning curve, just like in your personal relation. I mean, this is a personal relationship, but it is a work relationship. And so therefore it is different. And, you know, I shouldn't have raised my voice. And there are going to be things that happen, right? There are things that happen between you and an agent you recruit, right? And so it's part of that social contract that you know that you can work through the conflict and you do it in a smart and kind, you know, way. And I think that that's something that Edward and I really have gotten to the point where we excel at. Like, we disagree about things, you know, not all the time, but often enough. And now we are at a point where I'll never raise my voice and he's never going to hang up on me. And I mean, that's just the work that we've done together and the intention we've put into it, and recognizing that, oh, well, you operate this way, I operate this way. We don't have to fully agree on this to reach a point where we're both operating in a way that works together and for the entire company. And so, yeah, I think it's really important. Yeah. It's something now I think that we're like really good at. So, and we get to help. I've learned so much from managing staff and watching them have conflict and learning how to step in or not step in. And the reality is, you know, people often need maybe counsel, but to work things out on their own. And we've worked a lot of stuff out on our own. It's been good. So.
Yeah. And one of the things too on that, there's a great book, Fierce Conversations, where conflict is necessary. You know, you have to, you're going to disagree, right? If you delegate things, like here's what I've certainly learned for myself. If I delegate somebody to do something, I can't expect them to do it exactly the way I'm going to do it, right? I have to be okay with 80% of what I was expecting, but then as we go work through it, like, what can I clarify for that individual so that they understand more of what I was looking for, right? But know that that's part of the process, going back to what we were talking about earlier. So just being willing to engage in those and find methodologies, like that's some of the training that we go through as a company helps us to, okay, who is this person? What's their, you know, whether it's color, Myers-Briggs,
you should do all of them at least once, you know.
What's the other?
Enneagram,
like all those things. Like we've kind of done a little bit of each, so we have an idea. Like none of us are like fluent in that stuff and that language, right? But we know enough to understand that, guess what? This person hears things differently than I.
Yeah.
So I have to just be aware of that and understand this word that starts with a G called grace. Like sometimes I just have to give grace that, like, that's who they are. Let's try it a different way.
Yeah.
You know, try to help them understand me in a way that they can take in and process, and then hopefully help them understand where I'm coming from in a way that I can, you know, just that back and forth, like that has to be a part of the process, and know that I can't shy away from conflict, because the longer it's like we're sitting here, there's these rugs all around us. It's like if the owners of this place just swept everything under the rug, we just be walking on
it.
Eventually, right? You're walking on a lumpy rug and you're like, what's underneath this rug? Okay, all the trash. So like the longer you do that, like eventually there comes a day of reckoning.
Yeah.
That's something that I saw early in my business, where you could try to hide it and try to like push it down and mitigate it as much as possible. But if you try to avoid the conflict, the ultimate conflagration. I was looking for a big enough word, right? Like the conflict becomes like just a dumpster fire, right? And like no one wants to have to deal with that.
Right.
So be willing to engage in healthy conflict, healthy conversation, fierce conversation when it's needed, and build your team around this idea that we're gonna have grace for one another. We know that sometimes we're gonna agree, sometimes we're not, and let's be willing to give a little bit of forgiveness so that we can continue to move things forward. Anything else on that was a lot. The HR is a big one.
Well, I guess I would just like to touch on hiring for a second, just like from a ground level. One, so I have done all of our hiring for many years now. It is something that it can be a pretty tiring process, especially even though people think I'm an extrovert, I'm not. And so having to talk to strangers all day is not my favorite activity. But I'm always willing to answer questions or assist. I mean, I really think that our team is just incredible, and some of the kindest, most generous, loving people who are so wholly invested in everything that we do. And I think that's really hard to find. But prior to working here, I've never been on a work team quite like this. And so, and it's been trial and error that we've both worked through, that we've both been like, this person's great. And then a year later been like, that was not great, And so, I just want to say I'm always willing to assist with that, because I know that sometimes it can be a little confusing if you've never hired an admin just for yourself or something like that. Then I'm here. I'm willing to assist. So
not too much, because she has a lot
I'm really busy right now, but maybe in like 6 months. Okay.
But I mean, and that's one of the great things with the Quilty family. I do love the fact that we're willing to assist and give the insights that we've learned over time. And that's where having that strong business partner that has that as part of their culture too. It's very beneficial, because we've learned a lot from our corporate office. The good, the bad, the otherwise, because they've gone through many of the same trials and tribulations. And they're still going through they have a staff of 350, 400 right now. So they're operating at a level that we haven't seen, and we get to kind of look over their shoulders and see, okay, so when we get to that point, here's some things we can avoid, and here's some things that, that really worked. Well, let's hit on marketing and then close out with vision here. So on the marketing side, the key thing,
that's a doozy.
Yeah, it's a big one, and it's why we are going to devote an entire hour to discussing just marketing. But some of the key things that we wanted to hit on, one, and this seems basic, I think a lot of people don't think about it, but it's like actually just understanding the market that you're in. And it's not that we put conducting market research. You don't have to conduct it, but look for it. Be willing to do that research. Before we had people on our marketing team doing this, this was something I joke about it all the time, but the Treasury Department puts out their report on the life insurance industry every single year. And it's like these guys, they hear me quote from that report all the time, because it's a big metadata market research that's done every single year. And it tells me about the industry that I'm in. I don't read it page for page. I think the last one was 750 pages. I don't read all the pages.
Really?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I'm going through it. I'm looking for the things that it jumps okay, that's something that we're working on. Or here's our competitors or the people that we're in business with. What are they doing? How are they doing it? what is the sentiment in the market.
Absolutely.
Limra does a lot of market research.
Yeah.
We've signed up for some things that they have as far as just like sharing data that they're getting on a regular basis. But you have to understand the market that you're in. This is your business. This is your industry. Branding, positioning. Like, what are you doing to identify who you are and brand yourself in the right way? It's something we're still working on. Like, even with this webinar, like, this is a part of our overall brand. This is why we're introducing more of our staff to everyone, because we know that we have to set ourselves apart from what everybody else is doing. So, are these things that you're thinking about? And from an operational standpoint, this is something that Walker talks with our marketing team about on a regular basis. Like, what are we doing? How are we pushing this thing forward? And then, of course, the last one being, probably as you're getting started, this is probably the most important one for you. How are you acquiring customers and keeping them? Right. And many of you it's just through, I got to get some leads, sell them a policy, put them in my CRM. But then what happens after that? And it's something I wish we had started earlier, but something that, again, from our operational standpoint, by having a team that's kind of looking at the process and seeing, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Where are the blocks, where are the stop gaps in us getting more revenue? We've been able to identify that, that customer retention aspect, that's something we need to do a better job at. What are we doing for that? And so we're making game plans around that. The customer acquisition, we have basically one way that we do, and that has always been buying leads. Are there any other ways? And that's one of the things that
are there. Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that we're starting looking at. So I think on this one, and we don't have to spend, like I said, we're going to come back to marketing specifically and really dig into the aspects of it. But from an operational standpoint, someone just getting started, what are the things that they should just at least have in mind as they're, looking at their process for marketing, so that as they scale, as they get bigger, they can actually start handing off to, okay, here's who I need to hire from a marketing team perspective to get things started. Because I think I get comments all the time, and kudos to Malia, Drew, Juan. You guys do amazing work. There's other people I could certainly mention in there, but like, we get so much great feedback about, what you guys are doing marketing wise. And I don't think I'm out here. Maybe
Trevor's not like filming himself all the time.
I'm certainly not doing that. And I kind of cobbled this to, so if this is not good, don't blame the marketing team for this. When
we set this up, we didn't necessarily know we were going to be in Houston in this house. So
I cobbled this one together, but just being able to set that vision. And, when we hired our first person on the marketing side, I can remember when we were like, okay, we need to hire someone. Malia was the first person it's really to take on. So we did have, call out to our head of process management, Sarah Hurst, who really did marketing for us when she first came on for a while. And then we had someone else, didn't work out. That was fine. And Malia has really made the role her own, and now has a support staff member who is Drew Harnley, and I think you'll hear from both of them. Soon. And our team is already here. Like, they're doing a marketing minute every other week in our virtual office, sharing what they're doing, what they're learning, and how our agents can take that and do it themselves.
And I would say, shout out to Becca, who is Pavlik, who's doing was our, I'm going to forget the title.
New agent facilitator.
Even though I came up with
the title.
But as Becca, and you should see her social media, and it's something that it takes time to build, and it takes, effort. It's not an overnight thing, but I would say if you ask Becca how long it takes her to record a little video about why life insurance is important to her, she'd be happy to tell you, and that's something that we've really enjoyed working with her. And I know Drew and Malia very much enjoyed that. And so they are hopping on, giving marketing tips. They want to assist, they want to see you guys grow your businesses too. And there's a lot of little things you can sprinkle into your day to start building your own personal brand. And I think that is a really huge piece of how to create your own agency. I mean, the other thing too is like when agents are out looking for where should I go and why, there are so many teams you can join, right? And people will see Edward and they write to us and they say, we think this guy is amazing. Like we want to be part of his team. And, that's obviously with a lot of effort behind it and it takes time to build to there, but it's really incredible. The first time we ever got one of those, we were like, we're doing it, we were very excited. So they'd love to help you learn about your personal brand and how to build that up.
But it is a component of
Yes.
what you're doing operationally.
Right.
Like if you're not thinking about that as a key component of your operations, like yes, there's the client acquisition, retention of clients, leads, and that side of it. But then it's also just who's your company?
Yeah.
Who are you? Like even for your clients, like we're just starting, and this is 13 going on 14 years doing this. Like we're really just starting to start reaching out to our clients and making that a part of our marketing too. And I would encourage, like, if you're keeping that in mind when you're thinking about operations in general for yourself as you're getting started, then you can be ahead of the curve there.
Yeah, you have a leg up on us. Exactly. Keeping your client base relevant and your sites is a smart thing to do. Yeah.
All right. Last but not least, as we wrap up here, let's go over to talk a little bit about vision. And, some may think like, okay, so why are we talking about vision at the end? But as I was saying, if you don't have a game plan for what does my process looks like, how our finance, like you already have a vision. Hopefully it's fairly clear. But I think as you start going through and working through the process, working through the finance, working through again, human resources, it may just be you for right now, how you're marketing, it's going to help you clarify the vision. So some of the key things that I want you to think about, like as you're going through that process is, what's your overall organizational goal? If you're really wanting to grow a business, it's not just about like when I started, it was me, myself. It was just like I had an income goal.
Yeah.
Right. But then when I want to build a business, when I build an organization, like what are we here to do?
Right.
What does our staff go home thinking like, here's why I am here with this organization. And we talk about it quite often. It's like we want to empower as many agents as possible to be able to have the freedom and the lifestyle that they want to have, while at the same time, and this is something that I've recently been talking about more, we've recently been talking about more, is like we want to bring in more revenue for the company because that means we can give more back to our staff and grow what they're able to go out and do lifestyle and financially. So crafting that vision, right? Like it has to go from just you to, if I want to build a company, here's what it has to grow to. I would like you just kind of talk about how we are doing that from a business standpoint on a larger scale and what that looks like from that staff perspective. But then, as you get that compelling vision for like, this is me by myself as an entrepreneur, this is where I want my business to be. Now I have to start thinking about, okay, what are the priorities for getting us there? Like, what are the things that are going to make us get to that point? And then how do I talk about it?
Sure.
How do I talk about it on a regular basis? I feel like I still need to work on talking about it more.
Yeah.
We talk about it more on we have a weekly, what we call our L10, level 10. This is going back to the book Traction that we were talking about earlier. And we are talking more about what are we doing to increase revenue for the company? And then I need to work on and get better at tying that to, this is how it can be beneficial to everybody here.
Right.
And we do talk, I think, a lot about our goal, our purpose is to really help the agents that are a part of our team to be able to build the businesses and have the lifestyle that they're looking for.
Right.
So just that beginning point, though, moving from because this is where you really helped me out a lot, is moving from me thinking about it as just like, this is me, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm having staff that are helping me do this. And it's not just to build this thing for me, but it's to build this thing for us.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to an entrepreneur that's getting started with how to start thinking in that methodology, or thinking in that way?
Yeah.
Because it took me some time from the vision for me to the vision for we.
Yeah.
Because that's who's going to get you across the line, is we are going to get across the line. It's not me getting across the line.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't want to sound like I'm just reiterating myself, but I really do think that I think that at some point there was just a big light bulb about what Edward was able to accomplish by himself and what he was not able to accomplish by himself. And I think the other thing, to be very clear, is that like I was the person in college who I hated writing papers, but I love editing them. And that's how I think about Edward. This can be reasonable, right? And so, and that's worked out really well for us. I think if I was very much a dreamer of what the next business was, it would not work as well, right? Because there would be a lot of clash potentially. So I would just say, for someone who is starting out, I think seeing yourself and knowing that you are an entrepreneur or have an entrepreneurial spirit is fantastic. But no man is an island, right? And you can't do this on your own. Eventually you will get to the point where you need assistance, you need help. And so recognizing that you're not just doing this for yourself, but you're bringing people up with you. And that's not just your agents, that's your staff, right? And your agents and your staff are going to operate differently. You're going to hire them differently. You're going to look for different things, right? And so being able to pinpoint who those people are, what they need from an early stage, I think is going to be really just beneficial to you. And find your integrator. If you know you're an entrepreneur, find the person who is going to fill in your gaps and help stabilize you and say no. I think that's really key. Yeah.
And listen to them. Like that's where listen, like, make sure you have that conversation where, look, I'm going to push back into you saying no to something, and that's fine. Like, that's what's needed.
Yeah.
Like that push, that yin yang, like that give and take, like that's needed to flesh out and see, like, is this actually a viable thing? Like, is this really going to work? Is this going to make sense financially, or is this just a pipe dream that we're hoping for? And being willing to share and have that conversation with someone. And if you're just getting started, it may not be someone that is on your staff.
Sure.
Right? Like, it may start off being, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's a partner, maybe it's a close, trusted friend, maybe it's your mentor in this business, right? But have someone who can help you integrate what you're wanting to do for your business to get it to grow. And not just, like, if you're just dependent on yourself, as Walker said, like, nobody's an island. Like, this thing does, like, no business. If you're wanting to have a business, if you're just wanting to personally produce, you can do that by yourself. You don't listen to, like, you shouldn't even be on this call right now. And this call isn't for someone who just wants to be a personal producer.
Yeah.
If you want to build a business, you have to be thinking about being a business owner from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. Like, even when you don't have all the things, all the people, all the whatever, like, I'm thinking in that way because, as they talk about, like, as you think, so you are. Like, until you've thought it, until you've dreamed it, until you believed it's possible, it's not possible. So, like, you have to start thinking in that way, and then it starts to happen. Like, it doesn't happen, and then, like, what happens if you try to get it before you're actually thinking in that way?
Don't rush it.
Then you're going to lose it. Then it's going to go away.
Be thinking about it, but also be pragmatic. That's what I would say too, is, like you're, hopefully this mentor, this person in your life, whoever they are, can help you identify, like, yes, now is the point where financially, physically, whatever, time-wise, you are overburdened, right? maybe not financially, you know what I mean? You have enough money. And now is the time that you need to look beyond yourself and see what you can bring in. And so I think it's all about timing. It's all about being thoughtful and running your ideas off of that confidant. And yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah. And so to sum this up, like the idea and what we're presenting here and why we're doing this series, while we'll continue to put out things on life insurance today, that's what was supposed to be on the screen behind us. But sorry, Malia.
We're doing the best with what we have.
It didn't work out the way we planned. But the reason that we're putting out what we are putting out is because we want to empower you to be able to do this for yourself, to be able to grow your business, to be able to have some guidance. Because I know as we were going through, like, yes, there's some great books, there's some good stuff out there. There was not a lot of like videos that we could just access at no cost to be able to get things started. But then as you continue to develop, as you start to bring in revenue, plug into the trainings that are out there. I mean, we've worked with some great groups. We've worked with the Table Group back in the day with Patrick Lencioni. We've worked with EOS and Traction Group. And
prior to him being on board with Brian.
Before Brian Williamson was working directly with Quility. You know, he was one of our coaches for the EOS model. But like we invested time and money into doing that and had them help us game plan things out. We've worked with other organizations. I don't know if we need to mention all of them here, but like we've worked with other organizations too to help us grow our company. Happy to share that information with you all. But you know, when you get to that point, right? Like as you continue to grow, like you just have to be thinking with that. I'm investing in that personal growth, that personal development. The better I get personally, the better of a leader I can be, the better of a chief executive officer for my company I can be, so that I can work better with my chief operating officer, and so that we can start to expand that out. Walker does not like me giving out a lot of titles that have chief in it. So like those are the only two that I'm going to claim for right now. But like the goal is that you've
got to let people work their way up to that. Don't over title someone, then they have nothing to work up to.
But the goal is to have people who are truly chief, right? Like they're in charge of that. They know, like Walker knows, like, again, I step away, like me and my family are going to be over in Europe for most of the summer. I'm not worried because I have the chief operating officer that's going to make sure that the business is going to continue to run in the way that we've designed it, that we've coordinated. We'll still be able to talk and communicate. And that gives you the ability to actually run a business, because a business is not dependent on one person. All right. And that's what I think a lot of insurance agents end up doing, is they make their business just very dependent on just them. Like they have all these people who might have the title, but like it's them doing all the things, making all the decisions. And now they're not really able to leverage what they're intended to do as an executive officer, as a visionary, to push the business forward. And so then you start seeing businesses stagnate. And when it stagnates, then eventually anything that's stagnant is eventually dead, right? It starts to fall off. And we've unfortunately seen that happen with other organizations over the years. And that's what we're trying to help you all to avoid. So the last thing that I'll share before we wrap up today, what's that? There are some questions, but I will, here's what I'll say with some of the questions that we have in the chat. We'll get a download of this, and I know we do have everybody's registration. So if you do have any questions that we didn't get to in this, we'll try to, as quickly as possible, get back to you. We will be having a replay of this. This will be posted on our Life Insurance Today channel. So you can definitely come back and rewatch any particular part. But one thing that I will share before we jump off. All right. So what's next in this series? As we said earlier, this is about just the generalities of operations. The next webinar will be coming up. I believe it's in July. I have to double check, but I believe it's July. where we're going to be digging into finance. So we'll try to do that in the morning because we want you to stay awake for that. No, I'm kidding. Finance is great. Like it's one of those things that you really have to start looking at it at an early point, as Walker was saying before. Just start with a spreadsheet. Start somewhere. But we'll really dig into finance from beginner finance 101, and we'll probably get up to like finance 202 at the time we're done with that call. From there, business analytics. We have an amazing individual who does analytics for us. And she is able to parse out so much information from all the data. There's so much data that flows in all of our lives these days, and definitely if you're running a business. So we'll be diving into business analytics. That'll be in the fall, and then we'll be wrapping up with marketing. So if you want to get updates, there's the QR code. You can get your phone out. If you're not watching on your phone, just scan that. That'll take you right to the website. Many of you are already registered. If you're registered, we'll keep you updated with emails. But my hope for each of you is that this becomes a place where you can start. I wish someone had just sat me down and just 30 minutes, 45 minutes, like, okay, you're starting a business. Here's some of the things that you need to be looking out for. One other book that I recommended in the first webinar was Business Made Simple. Just go out, just Business Made Simple. You'll find it. There's some great coursework that he has there. And it really kind of helps those of us who, even people who have an MBA, right? I'm not, no digs at anybody, but like, even if you have an MBA, I promise you, Business Made Simple will help you understand business better than you understand business from whatever MBA you receive. Because there's something about just talking with someone about the practicality of running a business that makes so much more sense than anything that you can typically read in the book. Business Made Simple is different, but typically it's not just the book stuff. It's like what actually happens whenever you're in the process of it. So take these things that we took today, those 5 key areas. Remember, what are your processes? What's happening on the finance side, HR, marketing, and vision. All right. List those things out. What are you doing in those areas? If you just start with those 5 areas, there's many other areas that we can get into. We just don't have the time. But if you can just start with those and work on effectiveness and efficiency in those areas, talk with a mentor, talk with someone who's giving you some feedback and guidance on those, is going to help you really maximize what your business can possibly be. Walker, any last comments or thoughts for our entrepreneurs and business owners out there as we sign off?
Yeah, take it one step at a time. You're going to be great. Yeah. It'll build the way it's supposed to build. So.
I'm gonna say you might be great. It depends if you listen to someone like Walker, you find somebody like that to help you with your business. But yes, one step at a time, and that's what we're doing with this series. It's gonna be one step at a time. Continue to plug in. Well, there'll be a lot of stuff coming out in between. So subscribe to Life Insurance Today on YouTube. Obviously, you can follow the Pritchett Agency on Instagram, the Edward Pritchett on Instagram, TikTok, and all the other stuff that's out there. So with that, we'll see you later. We're gonna go get some dinner here in Houston. There's a puppy that should get us at least like 25 extra views. All right, thank you all for joining, and we will see you soon.
Bye.